All right, let's talk about some puberty blockers. It's been too long.
Well, yeah, Natalie's back on the show. We're going to take back up gender issues. Here we go. New video surfaced from President Biden's Assistant Secretary of Health asking medical professionals to be activists for transgendered youth. This is Rachel Levine, born a transgender person. I didn't mean that. Not born a transgender person, but is a transgender person.
Go on.
I'm not going to...
I'm already confused whenever, I don't know. I'm like, who is this person? I don't know who this person is.
All right, you let your instinct tell you what gender this person is. I'm not going to say anything that might get me in trouble on social media. But this person is the Assistant Secretary of Health to the Biden administration. And this is that person speaking at a seminar in Pennsylvania in September.
So I encourage all of you to think of yourselves as ambassadors to your communities. Ambassadors for science, ambassadors for compassion, and ambassadors for care. These conversations don't have to be limited or restricted to a medical setting. Offer yourselves as informational resources, not just for youth, but for school teachers, principals, school boards, professional organizations, recreation centers, county commissioners, and others who would benefit from this information and your perspective. Please proactively seek opportunities to speak about what you know. Our task is to educate the public in as many forums as possible. And we need to have these conversations that question the assumptions that are underlying today's attacks on trans people. Pushing back the veil of ignorance demands this extra effort, and this is the challenge before our profession. For almost 40 years now, I have considered it an honor to be a doctor. I believe in our role as healers. I believe in our role as truth tellers. And the truth that we need to confront now is that medicine and science are being politically perverted around this country that destroys human lives. And we have reached a tipping point for the role in medicine and civic life, for the health and well-being of LGBTQI plus youth and other Americans. Those who attack our community are driven by an agenda of politics. It has nothing to do with medicine. It has nothing to do with science. It has nothing to do with warmth, empathy, compassion, or understanding. They are rejecting the value of supportive medicine, rejecting well-established science, and simply rejecting basic human compassion. We, as doctors and as people who love our communities and love our nation, have to confront the fact that the language of care and compassion that they're using is being taken for granted to literally tear our communities apart. So we have to stand up. We have to take a stand on behalf of those who are being hurt. That's what we do in medicine, even when it's difficult.
Okay. I have a lot of questions about this. This doctor becoming an ambassador for science on behalf of handing out pharmaceuticals that will sterilize mostly gay children.
So if you say that they'll sterilize children, and that when you get, gender changing surgeries, essentially, that's political. That's what she's saying, that this is political.
That is absolutely political, so that we have to be, she says, doctors have to be ambassadors for science, which perplexes me because science tells us that there are two distinct biological sexes.
Right.
I think what they're saying is not science. I think what they actually mean is pharmaceutical companies. I think we need to replace that word with pharmaceutical companies.
With big pharma.
Big pharma, yeah. Biopharmaceutical complex. Yeah.
Because science tells us that there is an innate instinct that I am born with that will identify what member of the opposite sex what member of sex you are when you walk close to me. That's for a reason. That's so that I know who to mate with. Right? It's for reproduction of the species.
Right.
It's the reason that one species is distinctive from another, and that species are known to have the instinct to do this. That is science.
So are pheromones. Pheromones are science.
Right. So what science is she wanting to be ambassadors for here? I'm just very confused. Is it the science that people suffer from gender dysphoria? That's true. So, okay, gender dysphoria is a real phenomenon. Yes. But what science beyond that do we want to accept? The science that there are drugs that they can profit from if they give these people with gender dysphoria?
And it's exactly. And also, it's somehow political if I say, well, no, you're a biological male, like you're born a male. You're a biological male,
right? That's political.
No, I'm somehow insensitive to the fact that no, you were born a biological male. You've changed your name, and now you're identifying as a woman.
Yes,
that's politically insensitive somehow.
I was talking about this with some friends about how in a high school setting, one boy turned to someone and said, "Oh, I'll get the homework from her," and not knowing that someone had just transitioned, and he got dogpiled. Like, don't call her a her. How dare you? And that's he didn't know. And also, like, he was reacting on instinct, not meanness.
Biological instinct.
And so then he's now called someone who's cruel and was dogpiled on behalf of it when he was acting instinctually and gesturing to someone. So, this is the kind of thing that makes me crazy. Levine further says that this means that doctors should proactively seek opportunities to speak about what you know. I don't know. Do we want activist doctors, or should we have doctors who are, I don't think that's even, like, I'm trying to think if that violates the Hippocratic Oath. I feel like in some way it would, especially because the Hippocratic Oath means you don't give harmful medicine to people. And the gender affirming care she's talking about is puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, which do in fact leave people sterile.
Right.
Hair loss, bone loss, memory loss, all of those things are associated with these drugs. So I'm curious about that. When she's...
And we've heard this from a number of course, people who've detransitioned, who've said enough is enough, and they've detransitioned. And they talk about permanent loss of hair, that their bodies are now basically a shell of what they once were. Young people, like in their 20s.
Young people who have the bone profile of a woman who is postmenopausal.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, God.
So, she says that she believes in their role as truth tellers. I don't think that's the case. Truth tells us that something we are not allowed to say, such as people's born at birth gender. Truth tells us that puberty blockers have all of these negative effects on the human body. Who thought you can take a bunch of hormones and dump them into a child and then treat it like a makeup counter and see like how much more or less I can bring up or down your masculinity or femininity. And in fact, puberty blockers, testosterone and estrogen are not the only things responsible for the development of a person into a sexual being. I've been doing a lot of reading lately about puberty because our kids are coming up into that age group, and I just kind of want to understand it. And testosterone is only a small part of that.
Right, testosterone does not make you a man or make you a boy.
No, I mean, the release of testosterone starts to happen in the testes around 9. But there are other things that bring up, it's not testosterone. It's an adrenal process. I can't remember the name of it offhand, that starts like the dark hair, the smelly armpits, the smelly feet, the Adam's apple.
Turning into boys.
I've been reading, like I said, a lot of books about male puberty recently, just in preparation for my son's adolescence. And I asked Clayton the other day, I'm like, when did this show up? What did that feel like? Or what, and Clayton's like, get away.
She also said to me, she said, I see here that on average, a man has over 11 erections a day. And I was like, phew, that's a low number.
And 4 at night.
Like, yeah.
Does that, I want to ask questions without not asking questions, but that seems
like
a huge number to me. And again, this is
yes, it is a huge number.
How do you get anything done?
We don't. We don't. The answer is we don't get
Gentlemen,
anything done.
do you want to ring in on that number?
I mean, I can tell you one thing I get done.
That's why we have 3 kids. That's why I have 3 kids,
Okay, just give me a yay or nay. 11 a day, does that seem like a normal number?
Maybe
it doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Seems about ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Again, these are important pieces of puberty that you cannot simulate with a drug. Like if you have a transgender young male who is biologically female, she will never have the experience of these wet dreams, of this Adam's apple, of the, 11 to 15 erections per day that are a seminal part of apparently being a man.
I remember waiting for school bus or getting ready to go to school in the morning, and I'm just like standing there getting my coat on. I'm like,
actually, in
direction. Like, what's this about? Like,
I remember like in school, like not wanting to like, and this is something that you see on movies and stuff, but like getting asked to come up and do something on the chalkboard up front and being like, I don't know this, but I can't get up right now.
Yeah, I'm like, oh,
really?
I got a Charlie horse. I got a Charlie horse.
Like a hunchback.
I can't stand up right now. Oh yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
I was a big friend. I was a big fan of like sweatpants and stuff like that when I was around that age, and then somewhere in like 7th grade or so, I abandoned them completely.
Yes.
For reasons.
Yes, exactly. So we've all been there. This is like the guys' hour. So I'm telling you, yeah, that's what it was. To get up to go to the chalkboard, it was like, no, I can't. Sorry, I can't do it right now. I got a Charlie horse. My back is killing me. I can't stand up right now because I'm sitting next to, the cute girl in this class, and it's like,
Well, apparently, according to the books that I've been reading, one called Decoding Boys, which is a fantastic book about understanding male puberty. And it specifically talks about how a lot of the empowering language around puberty is meant for girls. Boys are kind of left out of the discussion and left to figure it out on their own, and that's wrong. And then another book that, like an accompanying book that boys can read on their own, which my son is reading, called Guy Stuff. And it talks about how, like, put your backpack in your lap if that happens and it'll pass, and that it's not even, and that actually it can also happen when you feel rage, not just like sexual passion, and that is this true? I'm on a tangent. Okay.
I have never had a rage erection. But hey, I'm 45. It could start.
All right.
Yeah. Never know.
Yeah. If that happens, feel free not to let me know. Now, the one thing that really got me here is when Levine says that we need to reject or people who are, politicizing medicine, they reject the value of supportive medicine. And that's where my spidey sense goes up. Like, who does this medicine support? Because it will never fully turn one person into the opposite gender. It cannot do that. It supports them getting close in appearance, but certainly not bodily function. The proof is that, as Helen Joyce points out in her great book, Trans, that even a trans person would have to find a biological man and woman if they want to have a child. They can't say, I am fully this sex, and then, okay, then go get pregnant. No, they can't, right? You have to then go find these
surrogates.
Yeah.
Right.
So, supportive medicine is something I really have a problem with because it supports sterilization. How is that supportive? Here she's saying basically, sex change for kids. Like, that's what supportive medicine is.
So this should be the role of the Biden administration. This is, and then of course they're holding the White House press briefing with Dylan Mulvaney and.
Yes, we'll get to that in a second. Here is a speech that Levine did in July, mentioning gender affirmation treatment, saying that we want to empower youth to get gender affirmation treatment. Again, emphasis here is on pharma.
So we really want to base our treatment and to affirm and to support and empower these youth, not to limit their participation in activities and sports, and even limit their ability to get gender affirmation treatment in their state.
Okay. Again, when you're talking about pharmaceuticals, you're talking about a sex change on an otherwise healthy body. So I don't know how empowering that is given all the contraindications. But I myself have started to notice that the media has begrudgingly begun to report on some of the harms that these pharmaceuticals and surgeries have done for children. And you can tell they don't want to be dogpiled by activists, but they are starting to. Even though the Biden administration says, hey, I'm all for it if you want to take any pharmaceuticals. Like you said, he spoke to Dylan Mulvaney at a recent White House event where Mulvaney asked, how can people have opinions about what my doctor and I decide? Listen.
Mr. President, this is my 221st day of publicly transitioning.
God love it.
Thank you. I am extremely privileged to live in a state that allows me access to the resources I need, and that decision is just between me and my doctors. but many states have lawmakers that feel like they can involve themselves in this very personal process. Do you think states should have a right to ban gender-affirming healthcare?
I don't think any state or anybody should have the right to do that, as a moral question and as a legal question. I just think it's wrong.
That was a White House event, by the way. Can we just step back for a second? That was a White House event.
Yeah. Picking the most popular trans person on TikTok.
Well, and like everybody's argument is always like, it's not that widespread. It's not that big of a deal. You're making a big deal about this. There's nothing to see here. And the thing is, they're being invited to the White House. That makes this a big deal. Like this is far more wide reaching than people admit.
And, we are starting to see that some gender ideology cases are hitting courts in the United Kingdom, mostly around what you are and are not allowed to say. So am I allowed to say, I'll get the homework from her? Is that a hate crime? These things don't hold up in a court of law. There's just no legal precedence for that. Now, he says here, I don't think from a legal perspective, we can stop you from doing that. And we don't have the right to. But you also don't have the legal right to tell me that I can't call you a him, even if you are wearing a dress. And so those things seem to be not holding up in a court of law, which is why now we start to see activists say we shouldn't have these legal challenges. Like the challenges themselves should be disallowed because
and also,
they can't hold up in a court of law.
Oh, so they can't even be brought to court.
Yeah,
I've pointed out several times that a task force that the government started, Kamala Harris specifically, and their goal is to write legislation that does what you're saying can't happen right now. They want to work legislation in that it is a federal crime to misgender or mispronoun someone.
Yes.
That's unbelievable. Like, so you see a person who decided to take pharmaceuticals and hack up their body and change themselves. And now it's a crime for you to call them their biological sex anymore. Like that's madness. We are living in an absolute clown world. Like when you asked me earlier today before the show about a question, I said, I don't even know anymore. Like I can't even answer that question. What is like, who is this person? I don't even know anymore. I can't even answer the question.
Yeah. So obviously the fact that this is coming from the Secretary of Health, who is setting a lot of agenda for medical practitioners around the country, is upsetting because this has been my argument from the get-go. It will harm children's bodies in the end if we put them on drugs they have to live with their entire life.
And it enriches the biopharmaceutical complex. Yes.
And it is
say the exact same thing.
And it is homophobic. It hurts gay people. Mm-hmm. And all the things. I won't go back over it. You know how I feel about it.
But I just, at the end of the day, she's the Assistant Secretary of Health, right? In the United States.
Yeah.
Like the Assistant Secretary of Health.
But, we've seen so often is that people who detransition, they come to the doctors and they're like, this is happening because your body's responding to something that's an endocrine disruptor. For instance, on the Matt Walsh documentary, which is fraught, I will admit. But there's
fraud how?
Fraught.
Fraught with what?
Because Matt Walsh is maybe not a sensitive character to talk about gender issues. He's just a little in your face about it. But he does talk to a woman who transitioned to a man and then back again, who said that she had all kinds of, can I say pubic hair?
Yes.
Okay. That she had pubic hair growing inside of the way that they had, like growing internally, that was causing infection because it's supposed to be
growing
somewhere else. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe anyway, the pubic hair was a big issue. I'm sorry if you're eating. And nobody knew how to help her. Like literally no one knew how to, because they're like, well, we gave you all this stuff, this medicine, because you wanted to look this way, but we can't actually, there's not really a standard for treating the contraindications about this. And that's awful to think that we give you all this medicine for an ideology because we think that that's empowering, but when it goes wrong, we really don't know what to do with you.
So then we'll just have to create a new cottage industry where we make a lot of money off of the contraindications. Like that'll be the next thing.
But they just don't know how. And most of these drugs, Lupron and breast binders, they're not studied because you can't study it on children ethically. So instead, we just give it to them.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at Redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to Redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.